All right. First of all, like she said, my name is AlisaHowell. I teach 4th and 5th grade math at McDowell Elementary in Floyd County. I also teach 5th grade social studies. And a little background, social studies still is not my strong suit. It's been a very, very long time since I have taught social studies or even seen anything social studies related because I taught 3rd grade and mostly reading and math. Never taught social studies. So when I was told that I was going to be teaching 5th grade social studies, I was very scared this year because I know that social studies, to me, is boring. And I have 3 children, and it has always been boring to them. So I thought, this is going to be interesting. So go ahead. At the beginning of the school year, my problem in practice was getting students interested and engaged in social studies. I knew this was a problem because at the beginning of the year, you know how you always do those student polls at the beginning to see what their favorite subject is, kind of interest inventory type things? I did those, and the least enjoyed subject was social studies. So I thought, I've got to do something about this. So I wanted to implement a more hands-on and actually getting into social studies besides just reading a textbook. All we had was a textbook and a workbook, and I was tired of doing that, and I know the kids don't like it. So when this grant idea came around, I thought, I'm going to try to find out something that I can do with social studies. So I stumbled upon virtual reality goggles, and our school purchased Nearpod. Have you all ever heard of Nearpod? Okay, we have a Nearpod account. So there are all kinds of virtual reality lessons. So I wanted to get the goggles so that my kids could actually go into social studies, so to speak. Go ahead. To determine whether or not the problem was being solved as I was using these goggles, mostly I would just observe the students while they were using virtual reality, and I just listened to what they had to say. And I would hear things such as, "This is the best day ever," and "I can't believe I just walked down the Oregon Trail," and it just went on and on and on. Remember that the goal was to get students engaged and interested in social studies, and clearly it was working. As far as test data goes, at the beginning of the year we had 69% novice and apprentice on ThinkLink benchmark, and the last time that we took the benchmark, which was, when was that? Last month, we only had 15% in social studies, novice and apprentice. So to me, that shows great gains, and I attribute most of that to the virtual reality. So in my homeroom, I was asking them about what their favorite class is now, and over half of them now are saying social studies because of this. And here are some pictures of my kids using the virtual reality goggles. And go ahead. And I thought, what better way to let people know what we were doing in social studies with virtual reality than to bring my little kiddos with me. So I'm going to introduce them one at a time and let them tell you some of their favorite parts about virtual reality. And first we have, go ahead and click it, Mr. Devin Sloan.
My favorite VR lesson was the Lincoln Memorial. My favorite part was seeing that there is text written on the walls and above his head. The text says, "In this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is established forever." Following the VR lesson, we discussed conspiracy theories such as Lincoln was originally supposed to be kidnapped, not assassinated.
Next, we have Miss Alexis Reed and all of her stuff.
The VR lesson that I enjoyed the most was the Western expansion. That was when a lot of settlers and people moved west for the gold rush and for their own good. This also affected the Native Americans living there at the moment. It was so cool seeing the actual wagons that were used for the travel and see the artifacts that were inside. I like doing VR more than watching a video or doing pencil and paper work. I feel like I have actually been to where we have been studying.
Miss McKenna Stumbo.
One of the most interesting places I have visited during virtual reality field trip was the Washington Monument. It was very cool to be standing at the bottom and looking way to the top. I could even see the cap at the top. I felt like it was like I was really standing there. It was much better than looking at a video or seeing a picture.
Jonathan Moore.
My favorite lesson was when we were learning about the Trail of Tears. The Indians were forced to move west during the journey. During the journey, many of them passed away and suffered from diseases. This is why it was called the Trail of Tears. In the VR lesson, I got to see the staircase that had waterfall flowing down it. This was representing the tears that were falling down. Without VR, I would not have gotten to walk along the Trail of Tears and see the actual things that the Indians saw.
Mr. Keithan Moore.
When we used virtual reality in social studies, I saw Independence Hall in Philadelphia. I got to see what Independence Hall looks like inside of Independence Hall and the statue of George Washington. If we did not have virtual reality, I would never got to see this. I think VR is very cool because without it, we would not get to see most of the things that we are learning about in this class. It's like we are really there.
And he's also a speed reader. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Dakota Olaf Madden.
I chose to talk about the VR lesson of the White House over all the other lessons that we have done in the class because, one, everyone knows at least one thing about the White House. The name just tells you that it is white on the outside and in. Second reason is seeing the White House in VR not only gives me an idea of what it looks like on the outside, but also shows me what it looks like on the inside. And my third reason is going inside the White House using VR shows me all of the items in every room, right down to the carpet in the Oval Office, to close-ups of the portrait of all the presidents.
Olaf, while you're up there, tell them what you.
They call me Olaf because I like to give people hugs.
And that is virtual reality and social studies. Any questions?